All right, here we are with Jack Daly, and I just thought I would frame the episode a little bit by reading just the first sentence of your recap, your recap of your personal goals for 2021. I just think it's kind of a neat way to set the stage. So, just the first two sentences. Most of the goals set a year ago were crushed. I'm titling the year of 100. Ran 100th marathon in Athens, Greece. Played 100 golf rounds and read or listened to on Audible 104 books. And I just think that's hilarious because that's only 1/10 of the entire sheet of the stuff that you did last year. So just kind of opening it up to that because your whole, personality is very inspiring on all the things that you do on a regular basis. And that's kind of something I want to dig in today because I kind of know you on a professional level, but I don't really know what makes you tick, and how you got here. So thanks for coming today.
Absolutely, and so it begs the question: what do you do in your spare time?
Yeah, exactly. I shared this list because it's public, so I always want to make sure I'm not crossing any boundaries with this stuff. But this is all on your website, jackdalysales.com, for a decade, and it's so inspiring to look at, and when I circulated it, people are like, okay, was this his whole life or was this just last year? And it's always funny because the amount of stuff you get into a year is incredible. And that's just one of the things I want to talk about today is, how did you sort of arrive here? If you rewind back, like when did you start setting these sort of audacious, I would call them dense goals, like just really a ton of stuff in 1 year.
Yeah, it's so the easiest answer with you all with all of those copies of my soon to be released book, Jack Daly's Life by Design, in the backdrop there.
Yeah.
The when did you start and how did you start is all in the book. And so as a summary, it's very easy to articulate. It all started at the age of 13. And what happened is that I'm the oldest of 5 kids. And in a couple weeks, I'll have my 73rd birthday. So if it started at 13, I've been at this thing for about 60 years, living a life of intentionality. And the family I grew up in, I would characterize as not wealthy by a long stretch. So let me give it to you in a couple contexts. All of my siblings are alive, and they're in their 50s and 60s. And 3 of the 4 of them are delivering mail for the U.S. Postal Service in the New Jersey, Pennsylvania area. So blue collar at best, right? And my brother is 3.5 years younger than I am, and I don't think he ever had clothes bought specifically for him, just hand me down. So that's the household. Now at 13, I get a job as a caddy at the private country club, and I thought I knew what the job was. Carry the clubs, find the ball, wash the ball, tend the pin, rake the trap. But within about a week, I realized it was way bigger than that. The reason it was way bigger is because these golfers were arriving, and I'd meet them in the parking lot and get their clubs out of their car, and their car was high-end new. Now, right. My dad's car was a 9-passenger station wagon that was in the repair shop more than it was in the driveway, with a couple 100,000 miles on it. And then these guys were playing golf on Wednesday and Friday and the weekend on the same guys, right? And I'm going, what do they do? Like, how do you work? Like, my dad is not playing golf, and he's working 6 days a week, and he's barely able to put food on the table. There's no golf in his life. And then as we're walking down the fairway, occasionally a guy would say, oh, that's where my house is. And I'd see this house, and in the backyard, fronting to the golf course, big in-ground swimming pool with a slide and stuff. We did have a swimming pool, Graham. It was about 3 feet above the ground, and it fell apart about 2 or 3 times every summer. The water was all over the yard.
You could slide out of it, right?
Yeah. And so I'm like, there are people living a different life than I'm living. And if I had to choose between their life and my dad's life, well, this is an easy call. But how do I get to these guys in their office and ask them, how did you pull this off? How did you accumulate the ability to have the time and money to do what you're doing? And a 13-year-old isn't going to get through the gatekeeper. And then it dawned on me. They came to my office, the golf course, and they had 4.5 hours with me side by side. So I just sat at home and wrote out all the questions I wanted to ask them. How did you get to be so successful? What do you think the top 3 to 5 things were? If you had to do it over again, what would you do differently? What advice would you give to a 13-year-old? And I had this script of questions. And I want you to think about me doing that with you for 4 hours and you going into the clubhouse afterwards. And there's somebody at the bar that you know, and you go, hey, did you ever have that Daly kid carry your bag? Oh, shit, did he ask you the questions? And I had literally at least 50 people vest in me. They just wanted to know what I was doing with the questions and where was I going in life. And one of the things that I pulled out of a lot of them was a similar thread. And that thread said this: you want to be successful, you got to have goals. Goals don't count unless they're in writing. And don't pick too many. Pick some indication of what will determine whether it's finished or not, like a date, when it's going to get done. And then once you have accumulated them, share them with as many people as possible, and that'll put the heat on you. And so I put down that where I wanted to be at 30 years old, when I was going to be old, because at 13 that was far away, and at 73 it's pretty damn far away. But what do I want to look like financially at 30? What do I want my family to look like at 30? What do I want to do professionally at 30? And what do I want to look like education wise? And if I could put my North Star, if you will, in those 4 boxes, and then build an action plan to take me there, then I probably could claim success by the time I hit that 30 years old. And so I've been putting my goals in writing and having a tracking and accountability system ever since I was 13. I have stories, Graham, from high school that changed the direction of my life. Competitive advantage over my competitors, the other students. I have stories of different stages of employment that moved me through the organization in an expeditious fashion because of this process.
You know, and I guess what I'm wondering about this is because as I'm listening to it and thinking about, my oldest is 12. So, and I, I gotta be careful not being critical of her, but I don't think she's thinking the same way. And so what I'm really curious about is, and I'm not saying that's right or wrong, I'm just really curious about, like, how did you get that way? Like, a lot of this can be said in hindsight, like you figured it out, you connected the dots in hindsight a little bit. But at the time, do you think you were really that intentional about, I got to figure out what these guys are doing? It's almost like a movie, like sort of, you're hustling to figure out how to get to that next level.
So, that question's been asked a lot. I'm dumbfounded by the question, quite frankly, and I realize that I'm an outlier in this regard.
Yeah.
All right. But how could you not? Like, it was so obvious to me. Like, these guys are living this life of grandeur, and we're not. I want to go there. And so you got to ask the question, how do you go? Let's do it this way. At 12 years old, the year before I became a caddy, I was took a newspaper out of 32 customers from a kid that had it before me, and when he gave it to me, he walked the route with me for 2 days. His last 2 days were my first 2, and then he said goodbye at the 32nd house, which he walked into, which meant it was his house. And there were houses all over the place that we didn't deliver a paper to. And I said to him, well, who delivers the paper to those people? And he said, I have no idea if they even get it. So what I learned that day from that kid was he was satisfied with the money he was making from 32 customers, but there was a much bigger market. So I decided that I was going to knock on the doors. A year later, I had 275 customers. Now, going to school during the day and having to deliver papers in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area in the cold and dark after school, not a fun job, but I like the money. So I said, how do I achieve both? And what it came up with was you had to be 12 to have a newspaper route. So I recruited 5 11-year-olds and divided the 275 and split the money 50-50 with them. So
You're multi-level marketing back then.
But it's how did I get there? Well, isn't it obvious, right? Now, here's the thing though. I've got 4 siblings. We were all born with the same parents in the same house. 3 of the 4 of them are delivering mail for the U.S. Postal Service, and they live nothing like the life that I've lived. Many of them don't even have a passport.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting what you said was, how could you not think this way? Because obviously that's how you're wired. And I think that's the really interesting part is you are unique, and it's like, it's really curious to me how that sort of wiring happens where you're like infinitely curious. Like, how did this happen? How did that happen? What did that, what happened there? How do I do that? Where a lot of people are just observing life. They're just kind of watching it and letting it happen to them, where you've taken the sort of opposite approach where, no, I'm the one living this life,
Yeah, look, I was something in high school called college prep.
Yeah.
In junior year, I can remember the guidance counselor giving me my syllabus for that year, and it had chemistry and trig. Well, what I wanted to be at 13 years old, by the time I was 30, was the CEO of a company in the money business that was doing business nationwide. That was my goal. And so chemistry and trig didn't fit the formula for me. I wanted bookkeeping and business law. But that, when I went to the counselor and asked for that, he said, no, that's in secretarial program. Your college prep, and so you get chemistry and trig. So when I went home, I told my dad, hey, Dad, this doesn't make any sense, but I won't get an audience without you, but I'll pitch it, but let's talk to the principal. And so I went into the principal with my dad and said, here's my game plan. I've had it since I was 13, and this doesn't fit. It just doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. And he looked at me and he said, there's not 1 out of 1,000 kids that could have this conversation with me. Nobody really comes into my world with this thought process at this age. Yeah. And he goes, you got it. And so when I went to college, I was an accounting major, and there were guys that were college prep that really struggled the freshman year. I had Accounting 101 and Business Law in my freshman year, and they used the same textbook that we used in high school in bookkeeping and business law. Like, they thought I was brilliant. Hell, I was taking it for the second time.
That's amazing.
I guess what I say, and I try to teach my kids this, just because adults and the rest of the world are telling you, hey, stay in this lane, just get the rationale for it. Ask the question, right? Yeah. The power is in asking the question. I asked the questions on the golf course. I asked the questions at high school. I mean, I'm not a rebel. During the Vietnam era, I was in a school that I volunteered to be in ROTC. So I've got white walls and wearing a uniform every Thursday on campus, and they're burning the buildings down that are the military buildings. Yeah. And people are smoking dope and have long hair, and I'm completely different. So it's not like I joined the rebellion. Right. But I do respect people that want to challenge the thinking.
Yeah, and I thought of a couple of things there. Like, what type of student were you in school? Like, were you distracted because you were bored, or were you, a studier, or like, how did you deal with high school and things like that? Elementary school is kind of growth phase, but like once you get sort of 8 to 12, it's, you're ramping up to your future.
Here's who I was. I got a plan in 4 boxes of my life that I designed at 13, and I'm gonna make it happen by 30. And the only thing that I wanted to do is focus on that. So if school could complement it, then I was in. If school couldn't complement it, then I was out. Here's a great example. And people think this is a sad tale, but I graduated with a class of 275 kids. And when you run around and get your yearbook signed by everybody with witty sayings, mm-hmm. Mine is sitting over there on that bookshelf completely like it came out of the publisher's plan. There's no signatures in the book whatsoever because I thought it would be weird to have a yearbook signed by less than 10 people. And the reason it would be less than 10 people is I didn't have any real friends to speak of, because the first time I met you, Graham, in high school, I would make an assessment. Is this guy going to add value to one of my 4 boxes? And if the answer was no, I don't have time for you. Now, at the same time, I can tell you that my best friend who wrote the foreword for that book, The Life by Design, is a guy by the name of Rick Iveen. And I met him in kindergarten. We went to grade school together, high school together, college together. We served in the military together. We were married the same year. We were married to the same lady forever. 2 kids, both kids are the same ages, and we worked in 4 different places together. And we, as a collective family, we've gone on vacation almost every year together. So it's not, to me, it's not the quantity of friends and relationships you build, it's the quality. Right.
Yeah. And I think, I don't think that's sad. I think I know what you're getting at. I think people would say people in leadership or CEOs don't have a huge circle of friends. They have people that they are really trying to get better with. And if that doesn't work, it's a lot of times people have trouble with, well, I got to choose my time wisely, and am I going to spend it with, someone that's helping me get better or not? Right.
Look, of the 5 kids, me being the oldest, my brother Joe is the bottom performer. But I can also tell you, I was a senior when he was a freshman. And by the second month, when we started school in September, and by October, everyone in the school referred to me as Joe Daly's brother. Now, the way it should work is he should be Jack Daly's brother because he's the incoming freshman.
Yeah.
But he was Mr. Popularity, and he was the basketball star, and he was the guy that would sneak the cigarette, and he was that was his world, was being the big man on campus in everyone's eyes, and Mr. Popularity. And I'm the guy that's just driven. In my yearbook for activities, it said I was a part of the library club.
Yeah.
I enjoyed being in the library.
Yeah. Learning.
I don't know. We're wired different.
Yeah. And I think that's the curiosity, is the wiring, how about your kids? Have they inherited your habits, or is there sort of 1 or 2 that have got a bit more of it or not? Or how do you?
So I have 2 kids, 50 and 43. And that's Melissa and Adam. And Melissa, in the big family, when we all get together, is referred to as Jack in a skirt. So she's got 3 degrees. They're all full scholarships, drama student of the year, out of 2,000 employees at the senior level of a Fortune 500 company. She was named manager of the year. I mean, this is a performing person. And in fact, I asked her, when I wrote the manuscript for Jack Daly's Life by Design, I asked her if she would edit it. And so my publisher agreed to let my daughter edit the book. So she's extremely accomplished. She's the mom of 2 kids and has a husband, and she's the president of the PTA. I mean, she's just, an Energizer bunny.
Yeah.
Adam, on the other hand, and I tell the story in the book, ma'am, I didn't think that Adam would make it to 30 years old. He was a serious methamphetamine addict. And he stopped at high school. He has a high school diploma, but that wasn't none of that was his shtick. And reading is just not even I don't even know if we'll even read this book. So it's just, and quite frankly, Graham, Bonnie, my wife Bonnie, when she was carrying Adam, she said, "This one's going to be a handful. I can feel it already, completely different than Melissa. He hadn't even appeared yet."
Yeah. So that's really the curious part for me, is that wiring. You just mentioned it, the wiring. And I think it's, you think that when you're raising kids, they're going to be like you, they're going to be similar to you. And then it's a crapshoot.
It's
that nature versus nurture thing.
Yeah, so I say, nurture them to death. Like you can't spend enough time nurturing, but I also say nature trumps nurture all day long.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I'm just happy that my son is 17 years clean, a hallmark of what a great human being is, a great husband, a great father, a great son, generous in spirit. With just I like the guy is just solid gold at this stage, right?
Yeah.
But he and I had a chat about this just this past week. He's curtailed his avenues to hit whatever success is, because he's got a record. He was in 3 jail systems. He was a methamphetamine addict. He has some health issues. He has employment challenges potentially. So he went the entrepreneurial route and built his own company.
Yeah.
He's not. If his company didn't make it, he's not an easily reemployed person, and he won't be taking the executive track
Right.
or fast tracking anywhere. And he recognizes that decisions that I've made have cost me. Right?
Yeah. Well, it's great to hear that he's doing well, all things considered. Right?
Yeah, I end up spending more time talking about Adam than I do Melissa. I could do what she's doing. I don't know whether he was in such a dark place that I don't. If I had been in that dark place, I don't know if I would have been able to climb out. It was so deep, right? By the time he was 25, he didn't have any of his original teeth.
Oh, wow.
So between meth eating them apart, and then being in jail, and one day being the guy that the gang decided to just beat the crap out of, so he's had dentures since he was in his mid-20s.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I mean, it's, I guess, the family system too. Like you would probably be a rock for anyone that needs help, right? So for you to be there and help the family is huge.
It was very, very difficult. And all I could think of was, when Shelley landed the plane in New York in the river. A whole lot of people could have died if he didn't stay steady at the wheel. Now, I've also said by the time he got everybody off and he got off the plane, he probably went around back and puked and shit himself and all kinds of things.
Yeah.
But at the moment, he didn't have the luxury of panicking.
Right.
Somebody had to stay steady at the wheel. That was me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned Pennsylvania. So is that where you grew up? Were you born there?
Yeah, I was born in Philly.
Okay.
And I grew up in South Jersey, just 15 miles outside of the city. And then I've lived in, I think, 7 states and about 27 homes.
Oh, wow. And it seems like you're a California person simply because you're so active and you need to have, 70-degree weather, 12 months a year type of thing. But I'm curious about, I went to Pennsylvania about 5 years ago, and a place called Nemacolin Resort. Are you familiar with that?
I've been there. Yep.
And I went there with my daughter for a father-daughter trip. And I mean, just an amazing place, kind of in the middle of nowhere where that's located, right? It's outside the city and this amazing sort of playground, basically.
Yeah, it's closer to that. Nemacolin Resort is closer to Pittsburgh than it is to Pennsylvania, and than to Philly.
Yeah.
I played the top 100 golf courses in the U.S. and Nemacolin is on the list.
Oh, is it? That's
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, and actually, the other thing that I realized, you always see this house, this Frank Lloyd Wright house, Fallingwater. You see it in all these magazines, architectural magazines.
Right.
And when I was going there, I just fluked out and said, "Hey, what's in the neighborhood?" And the house was, 30 minutes away from Nemacolin, so I went and checked that out too. So it's a beautiful city, a beautiful area, I should say.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but you got it. I mean, we moved out here in Southern California in 1985 for one reason only. It was the weather.
Yeah.
2 kids and a wife and I boarded the plane and said, let's go build a business out there. All of my businesses that I built went nationwide. So anytime I visited here in California, the weather was epic. So why am I living back here?
Yeah, you show up in rain gear or snow jacket to California from your hometown. And speaking of activity, on the cover of your book, even there's it's like a Rocky pose at the top of the stairs. So that must be an Ironman or some sort of marathon pose, is it?
Yeah. So if in the book at the back, there's probably 10 or 12 pages of photos of significant events in my life. And whenever I'm crossing the finish line in a marathon or an Ironman, I'm doing that deal, right?
Right.
And then we interposed over that drawing, me standing at the Grand Canyon, because several times I've done rim to rim to rim.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
I've hiked down and up the Grand Canyon once with a group, and it was super fun. That's a great trip.
that's
Now,
a task. Absolutely.
it is, yeah, and it's counterintuitive because you go down and you get warmer, and then you go up and it gets cooler because you do it in reverse, and so
Right.
you kind of forget. You run down thinking, "Oh, this is fun." Da, 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 da. It's like this is easy, and then you're like, "Oh, I'm at the bottom, and I got to go back up," which is the complete opposite of any other hike where you go
Did
up
you
first.
did you go as far as the river, Colorado
Yes.
River? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I did rim to rim, which is going from one side to the other, it's about 25 miles, and it hit 115 degrees Fahrenheit at the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah, it
So
was so strange to go opposite, and it makes sense, understand how elevation works. But now I'm curious about the activity, and it's what's kind of sitting with me a little bit from our conversation already is just the way that you're wired. It's not like you got this way. It's just like you were kind of born this way. Like this is how you are wired, and this is how things work. But it sounds like the activity of marathons and running and the activity started a bit later. Is that right? Like, what age did you start getting really active and going for it that way?
yeah, go back to the foundation. There were four goals, right? And one of them was family.
Yeah.
And I knew that Bonnie and I wanted to have kids. I met Bonnie when I was 16 and she was 15. And so early in life, we knew we wanted to have a family. And I also had, strong aspirations to be an entrepreneur and a business owner and a CEO. And so there's only so many hours in the day, and your priorities change. So I couldn't figure out how to do some of the things that I've done later in my life when I was being the leader of a company and asking everybody to give me their all-in effort, and me taking off time to do a marathon training or Ironman training or golfing the top 100 golf courses. And I didn't think it would be fair. I was really working quite a few hours. Well, the rest of those hours, I want to be with my kids. When I went to work out of college at Arthur Andersen, it was a prestigious firm and a prestigious job. But my first year, they gave me 100% out of town. Now, there were people that were unmarried, single, no kids, that were 100% in town. And they got to go home every night, and I'm in a hotel. And I went to the HR and said, can you just do like 50-50? And they said, once the schedule's set, it's set. Check back with us a year later. And I just wasn't willing to do that. And so I left the firm. And I had several partners pissed off at me, quite frankly, because they had promoted me twice in my first year. I was a fast tracker, but I'm not giving up the time with my daughter at the time. And so I'd like to play golf. I learned to play golf when I was a caddy, but the golf clubs were put away for 20 some years while my kids were the focus. And then once the kids were gone, and once by the age of 46, I had sold my last company. So that's when I entered the speaking business. Well, then the only person that I'm asking to make some sacrifices is Bonnie, and she was a giving person her whole life. She loved me. So She just said, "You go do whatever you want to do," and then I became a madman, right? Of doing all this stuff. I mean, look, I didn't set out to run 100 marathons. I set out to run a marathon under 4 hours, and then when I didn't accomplish that on my first one, it was unfinished business. So I did go under 4 on my second marathon, but by then it was like, well, this is sort of fun. I'll do one a year. So I did a marathon each year for 10 years. But I had only done 2 states. I started in Oregon because Bonnie said she would do it with me because they had a walkers division. And then the rest of them were in California. Well, my 10th marathon was in the Los Angeles Marathon. And a guy ran by me with a shirt, and on the back it said, I run a marathon in all 50 states. So I caught up with him and I asked him, and he said, there's a club out there on the internet called the 50 State Club. So I looked it up and I said, this has got to go on my bucket list. So then I'm running the 50 states, and then I ran into a guy that said he was doing the 7 continents. And I'm like, well, that sounds pretty cool. I'm going to run a marathon in all the 7 continents. And so once you get 50 states and 7 continents and you got some duplicates that you've run multiple times, all of a sudden you're at like 70 or 75 and you're going, wow, it might be kind of cool to do 100. And so I'll do 100 and I'll finish in Athens, Greece. So that's what took place about 60 days ago.
So you went 10 years running 1 a year, and then I can't do the math off the top of my head, but then you're like,
some years I would do 12 marathons. Yeah,
I was going to say there must be years where you've done at least
10. And all that nonsense started at 46 years old, just to be clear.
Yeah, which is amazing. I think that's something I didn't realize about you. I would have thought, and I hope this doesn't come across as critical, but because you've always been on the go, I would have thought that during your, as a father, young kids, that you were the same thing. You were always on a plane or always gone. But it's really neat to hear that you also said, you know what, this is a stage that I don't want to miss, and I'm going to adjust my career and my life because of it. And then when you're you were basically an empty nester at that time when you were at 46.
Pretty close.
Then,
yep.
Yeah, and then you just you said, okay, I got a new chapter.
Yep. Yeah. Adam and I are 30 years apart. And so, he was 16 and I was 46 when I took the first marathon. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you've also got some Ironmans in there. You're wearing a shirt too, but you have done more than one of those too.
Yeah, this is a great line of questioning right now. That was on my bucket list for 30 years.
Really?
But because of the commitment to the company and the kids and the family, I had to just put it on hold. And all of a sudden, I'm now in good shape because I've run a bunch of marathons, and I've got the time. And so I'm 58 years old, and I said, now I'm going to take on the Ironman, which is really funny because I did not know how to swim at 58 years old.
Yeah.
So I had to hire a swim coach.
Like you've been in a pool, but not really like a proper swimming and stroke.
Yeah. I didn't put my head in the water. I doggy paddled.
Right.
And so you can't make it with a run. You got a time that you have to hit, and you'd be worn out if you doggy paddled an Ironman 2.4 mile swim. So I hired a coach and learned how to swim. And between 58 and 66 years old, I did 15 full Ironmans and about 60 or 70 triathlons. Yeah.
Unreal.
Yeah. I became like addicted to it. Right.
Yeah. But I mean, it's nonstop training to do.
Well, it's not. So if you're running a marathon, there was years where I ran 11 marathons and did 3 full Ironmans and 3 to 6 half Ironmans. So you just show up and you're ready to go.
Yeah, it's like almost like pro sports in some ways. Practice is more for the skill, but you're playing 48 minutes every night. You're in good shape.
Right.
So
I'm not at this stage. I'm not ready to say this, but there was a time where if I arrived in a city and there was a race, I could sign up and race the next day. Ironman or a marathon, didn't matter.
I was ready to go.
Yeah, good to go.
That's amazing. And on the how did you? I'm just kind of curious on the first running. I didn't quite get that. How did you decide? Was it on your bucket list to run a marathon?
It was on my bucket list to run a marathon, and it just so happened that we're really going behind the curtain on this one. So when I left the business world to become a speaker trainer type person, which is where I've been for 25 years. I say I went from a 7-figure annual income to the starving speaker. I literally was working 10 or 12 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week in the speaking business. And my first year, I think I made $50,000. Yeah. I didn't change my lifestyle, so I'm digging into my
savings,
and I'm like, well, I don't know that I could do this forever. And so I would just go out for a run, and I found that as being stress relief. So to some degree, I became Forrest Gump, right? I mean, and so I find myself thinking I was going to go out for a 4-mile run, and I go out for a 10-mile run and be soaking wet, and I could sleep now. I like.
Now, did you see a marathon? I'm getting a little nuanced here, but I find it interesting because I ran a marathon once. I did the New York Marathon, and the reason I ran it was because I saw one, and I was just kind of taken by this event that I found emotional. People are running with names on them, running for so and so, and the people that get engaged while they're running on the marathon and stuff like that. So did you see one before you ran one, or was it just like, hey, I want to kind of you figured out what it was? And
yeah, I had an employee in my company. I had a business that I ran in Washington D.C. for 7 years. It did business nationwide, but our headquarters were in Georgetown. And one of the senior guys that worked for the company ran the Boston Marathon. And his name was Brian, and I got to talking to Brian, and he educated me that Boston is the elite race in the marathon world, and blah, 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 blah. And I did a little research and said, I got to go do a marathon someday. I never in my bucket list did I put, I'm going to run the Boston Marathon because the qualification to run it seemed so out of reach, right? Yes. And but I have done it 4 times now. And so the first time I ran the Boston Marathon, it was just chilling, right? It's just an amazing thing, right?
Yeah, it is one of those things that if you haven't experienced it or at least seen one, like even standing on the sidelines is incredibly inspiring.
Oh, well, New York especially. There are 50 to 60,000 runners, and then there are 1 million people on First Avenue alone cheering you on. That when you come across the bridge, the noise level is insane. And then there's actually 2 million throughout the 26 miles that are out there cheering you on. There's no loneliness, that's for sure.
No, they kind of carry you to the finish line, right?
For sure.
You can't stop. You can't stop on that one. That's fascinating. Now, the bucket list thing, the goals that you put online and share with everybody, when did that start? Because, there's a decade on your website, but you mentioned 13 as sort of originally writing your goals down. But when did it really become a system where I think there's a really important piece here was when you share your goals, they happen so much faster because other people want to help you achieve them. So you might put something on there, I want to golf at this golf course, and somebody goes, well, I'm a member there. Hey, let's go.
Exactly. People can't help you get what you want in life if first you don't know. Like you should figure it out, and then let other people know it, and they'll come out of the woodwork to help you. Like it's been incredible to me. I told this story just the other day about a YPO member that contacted me after looking at my website and said, do you still need to fly a jet fighter plane? And I said, yeah. And he had bought a fighter plane from the U.S. Air Force, and he sent me a photo. And lo and behold, I flew a jet fighter plane without any flying instructions. Now, there's no way that that happens.
Yeah.
Right now, an undone item is to carry the torch
Oh, okay.
for the Olympics. Not the last guy that lights the big one,
Yeah,
but
yeah, in the stadium, yeah.
they break them down into like tenth of a mile, and right.
Right.
And the cool thing about carrying the torch is you get to keep that as a memorabilia item, and you can put that in a shadow box and put it on the wall in your study or whatever. Right? It's pretty sexy. So that's an undone item. But I have 3 different people that have now come to me and said, "Tell me which one, and it's done. I can get you there." So
that's excellent.
That's,
when did you start? I know the internet.
In my 20s.
And you started sending it out to people, or how did you first start?
Handing it out to people all over the place, right? When you say sending, we forget that there wasn't an internet back in those days, right?
Yeah,
so it's on the back of a pad, and I'm giving it out to people, and then just word of mouth and those types of things. I'll tell you one that's still on the list that years ago people really thought I was insane. Now people still think it's a stretch, but they don't view me as that squirrely anymore on this one item. But on there is to live to 125.
Okay.
That went on my list at 28 years old.
Really?
So at 28, what I said was, you know what? If I take care of this vessel, if I eat right, if I exercise and stay in decent shape, if I go regularly to the doctors, if I really take care of this, until I'm 75. By the time I hit 75, medical science by then would probably figure out how to take me to 125. But if I hand them a broken down 75-year-old man, they probably will pass on me as far as investing. And so, I'm just a couple of years away, and I'm watching, the Today Show. They've got the jar of jam with Betty is 105 and Pete is 110, and it used to be when Willard Scott was on there, he would be talking about people being in their late 80s or 90s. Right. You don't even make the jelly jar now unless you're over 100. So 125 is in the hunt.
Now, is that on your list?
It's on the list. Yeah, it's on there.
Amazing.
It's around the numbers change, but it's around the number 125 actually.
you know the number. Yeah, that's it's really inspiring. I think what it is I'm not wired the same way, so that's why I don't mind telling the story about how we kind of connected. I was looking to grow sales in our business, and who's the person I should be speaking to? And that's one of the beauties of YPO is you can just fast track these things.
Right.
And 2 or 3 people came back and said, you gotta hire Jack or see him somewhere. And it just so happened that I think you were coming in for someone's kickoff in Vancouver. I saw you in Vancouver, and the energy and everything that you had, and it's just it really, and now here we are. Coaching me once a month or so, and so the inspiration I get from you is not just on the business and that. It's like, wow, you're basically 25 years ahead of me, and it's super inspiring to go, this slow down mentality is like, you retire and kind of die, and I think that saying of stasis is basically death, right? Like if you just stop moving, you die. Yeah. And to see you now, you want to go another 50 years basically beyond where you're at.
I have a lot more to do in my life. Here's a question I ask people no matter what age they are. Are your best years behind you or ahead of you? And my answer is always, my best years are still to come. Yeah. I have some really, really cool things that I want to accomplish and do. And I'm always adding them to the list. It's just a never-ending thing.
Now, the other thing I think about a lot is, that the whole world is surrounded by, apps and hacks, and even I think one of the funniest things is they'll sell like a pad of paper. Like you need this pad of paper to succeed in life because it's got the lines in a box in a different way. Like this type of journal will make you better. And what I love about your style is it looks like it's just a Word doc. It's a Word doc in a PDF. It's not like, oh, check my link in this app. And here's the progress on everything. It's like, here's what I'm doing. But is there more to it? Is there like, how do you break down all these goals? Like it says you want to watch 120 movies this year. So how do you know where you're at and how do you track all that?
Yeah. So we're going to go simple here. So this is my tracking tool, and it's called Month at a Glance.
And by year? That's a 2022 one?
This is 2021.
Okay.
I have 2022 sitting right there.
Yeah.
They're always together. And I've had these for decades.
So you've got a shelf of them
Yep,
somewhere?
Yep, over there. Yep.
Yeah.
And in here, they go with me everywhere I go. There are my goals that are available on my website. This happens to be 2021. 2022 is over there.
Yeah.
And the reason I have 2021 is because it's filled in, right? So I can show you that there was my February activity, and every day I write down anything that went on that day that relates to anything that I've got as my goals.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the month, I have the key items that should be tracked. And then a month by month tracking as to how I'm progressing or not. And if I want, I can look at where I was the prior year for a year to year, month to month lookup. Now, I have people that come to me and go, Jack, there's an app for that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's great, but this works for me. And I have converted more than 100 people from the app to this.
Yeah.
And one of them is Karen, who is my wife now because I lost Bonnie 4 years to cancer. And Karen runs an $80 million company that she owns. And when we got together 2 years ago, she saw me. I take this out every morning and record the day before and look at it. And the act of writing it. So she has one and she does it exactly now the same way I do. Mm-hmm. And she said, it's amazing. You don't you can't go off the plan if you do it every day. If it's just a kind of a religious ceremony. And then, so certain things you track, and it depends on what your goals are. But for example, this year I want to log 6 million steps. So I have an app on here that calculates the steps. It's just I have it with me, and I just record what my step count was each day. And then I summarize by the month, summarize by the quarter, and I just stay on the flow, right? And so I'm on my marathons. I've got Runkeeper as an app, right? If I watched a movie the day before, well, when I take my calendar out in the morning, the next morning I just write movie. Yeah. If I read a book, I just write book. Yeah. I put my weight on every morning there. I put how many hours I slept that night. I just look at the clock before I go to bed, and then I know what time I get up. And so it's 7.5, 8, 8.5, whatever it is. Yeah. And then you just accumulate it, right?
Yeah, and I think it's I love hearing that because the simplicity of it and is what makes it work. And I think what I've found, and I've been guilty of this, so I don't mind admitting it, is like sometimes not having the right app to do is basically just an excuse to not do the work, right? It's just like, oh, I need a better app to actually go walk 10,000 steps.
Last night I was sitting in my office and Karen was upstairs in the gym, and I made a reservation for dinner tonight and said, dress accordingly. And I sent her a text and said 7:30 we're dinner, and she was just filled with joy that we were going out. Well, in my goals, it says twice a month we're going to get dressed up and eat at an elegant, nice restaurant. And I got to check the box.
Yeah, I love it. And what happens when you miss? Like it seems like there's these sayings, right? No days off. It seems like you have 0 days off ever because all this activity that you're having and tracking, you can't be off. Otherwise, you'll miss the goals.
Yeah. So, you know what? Out of 365 days last year, I think 350 or something I exercised. What happened with those 15? Maybe I was doing international travel that precluded me from really making it happen because of all the time zone changes, or maybe I was ill, right?
Yeah.
And so as you know, I had a bout with malignant melanoma stage 3 that we removed from my head, but it reappeared, and so I'm in a program with chemo that's called Keytruda that I get an infusion every 6 weeks, and I'm about halfway through, and sometimes it knocks the hell out of you, quite frankly. So you're in the hospital, hooked up to the stuff for a half a day, and then they release you, and I just don't have to get up and go, and so
Yeah, that happens.
so bad.
Yeah,
So
life
so
happens.
if we're doing 6 million steps a year, there's 12 months. That's 500,000 steps a month. And if you divide it by 30 days, it's more than 10,000 steps a day. It's closer to 16,000 steps a day. So on that day, I might have only logged 2,000 steps. So I know that somewhere down on that calendar, I got to pick up a 22,000 or whatever step day, right? So I just schedule a longer run. I'll just go 8 miles or 10 miles instead of 5 miles that day.
Yeah. Well, I think it's fun to track that stuff now. Like my kids are even into it a bit. They've got Fitbits, and they got Fitbits for kids. And last night I had a 3-hour session with you yesterday, and then I had another 2-hour meeting. So I didn't walk hardly at all. So at bedtime last night, my son said, "Dad, how many steps?" I was at like 2,200, and he's 17,000, right? These kids are just like so active, and I'm like, oh, I got to get out, and I like that. I'm going a little bit of detail, but when you have to roll it forward, are you measuring it on a daily basis, or is it a weekly basis, or is it a monthly? Like, how you sort of, like, if you missed 10,000 or 16,000 steps over 2 days, and you go, okay, now I got to do 32,000. Is that on a week, or how do you kind of make sure?
Yeah, so it's measured every day. I record every day, and I can see it. It's month at a glance. So it doesn't take me long to just eyeball it and say, hey, if I got to get 16, 17,000 steps a day, I just went under on 2 days. Did I pick them up somewhere else? So as you know, one of the goals I have this year is to run a half marathon every week.
Yeah.
Well, a half marathon makes up for a day or two of not getting it done.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, is there anything on the list that you really don't look forward to? Are these things that some of them that you have to do to stay healthy, or is everything on there that you really enjoy? And have you moved it much over the years, I guess, too?
I guess I'm not even, like, I don't even understand the question almost. Why would I put anything on my list that I don't enjoy? Look, I'm very serious about taking care of this vessel, right?
Right.
So I have my internist doctor that I visit with twice a year. I have my dentist that's 4 times a year. I have my eyes checked twice a year. Like all of those people are important to keeping me healthy. I'm not going to take this car in when it's broken. I'm going to take it in regularly to make sure that it doesn't break. But all of that it's not like, hey, I got a dental appointment today. I'm pretty excited. It's just part of the process, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great, when you say it that way, like you don't understand the question, it's a really great point too. Like if you're going to set goals, make sure it's a goal that you really enjoy, because some people would put on something like, I have to do this in order to stay healthy. But you've made everything that you put on that list of something that you enjoy doing.
I make this point in the book big time. We get to choose.
Right.
Unfortunately, the overwhelming majority of people never sit down to reflect and choose. Yeah. So life just sort of comes and goes, and you hear people go, the whole life just went by me. Yeah. Well, you have it. You can decide.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really gratifying. I think writing down those goals, spending the time to think about what you want to do, and then also I think what's your feeling? It just got me thinking. What's your feeling on just the fact of writing them down helps them happen? Like we talked a bit about it by publishing them or telling other people about them, but this whole theory of you write them down and they kind of get into your subconscious and you just drift in that direction,
Yeah, so I have statistics that from a study that I articulate in the book as to what percentage of people actually write their goals down,
Yeah.
and then what percentage look at them more than once a year, and all of a sudden you're down to less than 1% of
Yeah.
people are doing what I'm doing here, right? But for somebody that's not doing this, it seems like over the top and maybe weird. For me, it's like breathing. We don't think about brushing our teeth; we just do it.
Right.
This has just been going on here with me for 60 years. That's just I don't know how to live life without doing it. Like, it would be weird.
Yeah.
Right? And by the way, there's a chapter in the book that I put on early on, and to say to people, and don't tell me I wish I had this book when I was 30, or I wish I had this book when I was 20. The book was written too late for me, because there's a unbelievable amount of people that we all know of that didn't get their mark until they were 50 or older. So, Colonel Sanders and Kentucky Fried Chicken, Ray Kroc with McDonald's, Martha Stewart, Julia Child, all of those people. And so I have this long list going, hey, these characters didn't even get started. I didn't know how to swim at 58 and did 15 full Ironmans. There's nothing called too late. In my future, I want to see and take a crack at being a kids book author, which has taken me completely out of my element. And I just, but Dr. Seuss was an extremely popular kids author, and he's gone. So, hey, there's a slot open. Could I become the new Dr. Seuss with my own crazy characters and stuff, right?
Oh, you have to do that. You've got so many.
Just push me out of my element.
To tell. Yeah,
right.
You've got so many great stories to tell. That would be amazing.
Right, and so you can hire somebody to do the drawings, and then you just kind of let your mind kind of go and just push yourself. It's kind of like Bush 2, number 43, George W. He left the presidency and became a painter.
Yeah. And he's good.
And he's not bad. I mean, and he's got a coffee table book with his paintings there, and I mean, it's the real deal. And he didn't have any of that prior to that. He left the presidency and said, "What am I going to do with this extra time? I think I'm going to challenge myself to go in another element and paint."
Yeah. And the other thing that strikes me about you, whenever it doesn't matter if it's business or personal, is that the personal accountability is huge. And I don't think I've ever heard you blame anything or anyone. I don't think I've heard you talk bad about another person. And it's like, it's very refreshing, because, there's a tendency for people just to blame things or have reasons or excuses. And the stuff that you've been through, you could have thrown in the towel for multiple reasons. And it's fascinating.
Yeah, accountability is a big word for me, right? So when the interviews with the golfers at 13, and they said share it with people, they'll hold you accountable. That evolved over time to where I am today, and I have something called the board of directors of my life, and that's 5 people that I give my goals to every year, and say 4 times a year, one-on-one, just call me up or go to lunch and go line by line and ask me how I'm doing and what I'm doing on that. And that's 5 people 4 times a year. It's 20 one-on-one visits a year on my goals. And the criteria of getting onto the board is you care immensely about me and won't tolerate my bullshit.
Yeah.
Right? So Bonnie loved her to death, 52-year relationship, 47 years married. Always wanted to be on the board of directors of my life, and I never let her in, because if I sat down with her and said, hey, I wanted to get all this stuff done, I got 90% done, these are the 3 things I didn't get done, she would have said, Jack, you need to lighten up on yourself. You get more done than anyone. I don't want that in a board member.
Yeah.
So my five are tough. I mean, and one of them is Melissa, my daughter. And so there's no way as a dad that wants to set a good example for my kid that I'm going to show up and say, yeah, I wrote those things down at the beginning of the year, but I've got other stuff going on, and let's just blow it off and enjoy our lunch together. She'll go nuts on me.
Yeah. Now, accountability. I've only learned what this word means. Like, I was really curious. You always hear like hold someone accountable. What is your definition of accountability?
Do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it, whether you want to or not.
Right.
Boom.
No. Yeah. No other excuses.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Look, do I get everything done? No, I don't get everything done. But if I get 95% of the things that I'm trying to achieve, my list is long every year. I'm just not going to get wigged out on the things that I didn't get done. I'm going to cherish the things that I did. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I also want to thank you for sharing so much. You shared about Bonnie, and I've, sort of I feel like I've been through that journey with you in a strange way where, I knew you while she was alive, and then you sharing her passing, and my mom also passed away from cancer, and it's just really inspiring. So I just want to make sure you hear that. You probably know it already, but whenever you share that type of thing, it's kind of gives people hope. And I see the stuff that you share online and how much it gets interactions. You're getting a lot of people, whether it's a like or it's people thanking you. It's really inspiring to share publicly.
That's a great point, Graham. So when Karen and I got together, she noticed even more so how much I shared with the public, particularly in the social media space. And she was curious about it. And I said, you have to understand how many people are following me to some degree and watching. And I'm going to share with you, not by bragging, but anytime I get a text or a handwritten card or a voicemail or whatever, an email, I'm going to share it with you when people say, hey, you got me off the couch, and I've lost 20 pounds, and because I watch your postings, this and that, and there's not a day that goes by, it seems, that somebody isn't saying something like that. So do I need, I was on the rower this morning for 4 15-minute rowing sessions, and each session I took a picture of what the meters were and all the rest of that, right? And I post all 4 pictures. Well, I do that almost every day, an hour on the rower. Hey, enough. Get a life. We don't need to see that every day, but somebody is going to see it that day.
Yeah.
It's going to say, I don't have any excuse. This guy, I'm half his age, and he's up doing it, and he's a busy guy. I'm going to get up and do it. And so that's my deal. Right.
And I just want to encourage you to keep that up. It just sounds, you're going to, but there's a saying that's, again, I don't know why I care about some of this stuff, but sometimes there's a saying that says, if you want to lose friends, talk about self-improvement, right?
I've never heard it. But
you get it, right? Like,
yeah.
Some people are like, dude, enough, just be quiet. And people that are into self-improvement, when I see your post, same thing. I'll be sitting here on a meeting, and I'm like, Jack's 70 years old. He's posting his Peloton. Hey, that's my favorite instructor too. He's posting a picture of her or him, and like, get off your butt and go. And so it is inspiring. And so I'm glad that you're doing it. And I think, it's just wonderful. That's one of the benefits of, I think, sharing on social media is, when you're locked into someone that you're aligned with, it's inspiring. It's almost like what you said, you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most. And I'm hanging out with you in a way online, right?
Yeah. And, I've got a guy in New York, upstate New York, that owns a company called Alpenhaus, and his name's Andy Heck. And Andy last year, now he lives up in near the northern part of New York, so it's lots of snow and cold during the winter. But on the nice months there last year, he ran like 20 weeks in a row a half marathon. And so when I talked to him, I'm like, man, that's inspiring. And by the time I got to the end of the year, that's when I decided I'm going to try to do a half marathon every week, 52
Yeah.
weeks of a half marathon. And I will tell you that I'm on track. But I was down there on Wednesday. This is Friday. I was there 2 days ago, and I ran the first mile as my legs just didn't feel good. And I said, they'll come around on the second and third mile. The second mile was slower than the first, and I'm like, I don't have it today. And so I ran 3 miles and went home.
Yeah.
Now I still have to get that half done, so I'm going to do it Saturday morning, and hopefully it doesn't affect my golf game in Saturday afternoon. But it just it wasn't there. But I'm picking things up all the time from other people that they're doing, right?
Yeah. Like you're endlessly curious and inspired by other people's goals and aspirations too.
Randy Cohen owns Ticketcity.com. He's based in Austin, and he posts on social media pictures of him running with the Bulls in Papelona. And he was in the whole white outfit with the red sash and stuff. And I'm like, that's me. I got to do that. Now, that's not been done yet, but that's on the list.
Yeah. I love it. Now, the other thing I was thinking about is this crossover on, business to personal. There's a lot of things in your teaching and sales. And I hope, forgive me if this comes across the wrong way, but it's not like rocket science. It's not like, oh, you have to do these two things together at the exact same time and boom, you're going to have, it's almost like the boring basics, but the accountability to actually doing them day in and day out and not doing it for a week and then giving up. It flows over into personal health and personal improvement too. And what's your take on that with businesses a little bit? I really wanted this episode to be about kind of your, what makes you tick personally. But on the business side, it all relates. It's like you teach these things to people. It's basically, if you just do it, you will win. But like, what do you see? And I'm not trying to get you to criticize your own customers, but like, is there a sort of pie chart of people that actually don't do it? They just like, that was a good learning for a day, and I implement 10%.
Disappointing to me. The majority of people don't take action. And no matter, and I try my best to get people to go and do it, but they're just distracted by the urgencies of the day is what I attribute it to. But I grabbed my goals here for last year, and we talk about fundamentals and basics. On my goals last year was to have 180 handwritten notes.
Right.
So I've got a whole bunch of cards over there in my credenza, and I'm going to make a note and send it to this guy, send it to that guy, and so forth. So last year on the note cards, I had 326.
Yeah.
Versus 180 on the goal. And I know what it's like when I get a handwritten note from somebody. I mean, it's way more meaningful than somebody sending me a text message or an email. And it took a little bit of extra effort, and it's personalized, their handwriting and all of that type of thing, that they would think highly enough of me to go out of their way to do that, right? And so I teach salespeople to do that. And Karen and I had a conversation. She's in the exotic fruits and vegetable business. We had a conversation. She asked me to come into her office this morning, and she said at the house, and she said, "I'm going to tell you a story. We just won over a major national account, and I think it's directly tied to the holiday card that we sent out earlier this month. And I want you to talk to my sales guys when you talk to them in February and talk about consistency of the basics is what will set you apart."
And I think this is like it sounds like a generational thing. Like somebody would say, well, handwritten notes are like old school. Like no one cares about that anymore, right? And so I was at one of your sessions, and I'm going to try this. I always believe, I love that saying, like, just like shut the hell up and try it, and let the results, be what they may. Don't just write it off before trying it. And there has been at least half a dozen instances where I've gotten responses back about a handwritten card where one guy said, "I don't know how you did that." Because you're one of your early on lessons I learned was like basically do it in the lobby, like put it in the mail.
Right. Right.
before you leave the building type of thing.
Yep.
And he sent me an email, Graham. I don't know how you did that, but that was super thoughtful because you don't get handwritten notes anymore. And another guy, I went and visited his office, and it was still on his desk, and I'd given it to him like 3 years ago. And
Well,
it
that's
was a thank you.
because nobody else is doing it.
Right, because no one else, there's no cards, you don't get them anymore, right? And so it just stands out and makes you unique.
I did my 100th marathon and got this card from somebody with me, with my shirt, and it's in the stadium in Athens. And inside a couple more pictures from the day that they pulled off of Facebook and then wrote me a nice note. And this card is sitting here. It's been here for over 30 days, and I don't know that I'll ever remove it.
It's really hard to throw something like that out. You're more likely, if you're going to get rid of it, you probably put it on a shelf or in a drawer somewhere because you're like, this is very thoughtful.
Absolutely. Look, we're dipping over into the business side, which is fine. But let me bring it back to personal. I went on my first trip since the pandemic, and it was multiple days that I was going to be away. And Karen and I have been pretty much together for the last couple of years, and so it was a unique thing for her. And when she left to go to work that morning, I had not left for the airport yet. So I put 8 different cards in different places in the house. I put one in the laundry room. I put one in the gym. I put one in their bed. I put one in the refrigerator. I put one in her underwear drawer. And while I'm away, she comes home and she finds them at different times, and she's sending me texts like with love notes and stuff. And it's like, but it's part of the process.
Yeah.
Right. It's what I did with Bonnie all the years we were married. Look. When you're in a dating environment, you work really hard to win her over, right? Well, once you've landed her, why wouldn't you work even more after, right? And by the way, I'll go back to the business. I say the same thing to salespeople.
Yeah.
You work really hard to win over an account, and then you stop courting them.
Yeah.
Court them even more once you get them. The business will grow even more handsomely.
Yeah, and there are so many. It's the same thing. Not just courting customers, but your employees. You court your employees. You sell them the world. And one of the best things you ever said, I was so funny. I think you said something like, I don't know what the ROI is on a retirement party versus like an in-house celebration, a welcome party, right?
Yep.
Or re-onboarding or something like that. And don't get me wrong, I think you should honor and respect the people that are leaving, but sometimes you're giving more parties to people leaving the company than people that are there working every day.
Yeah, we're right back to what you said, and that is none of this is rocket science, but it's just an expression that I'm not sure my mentor came up with, but I attribute it to him. His name is Jim Pratt, and he said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
Right. And so like leading with the heart. And so I just feel like that's been one of my strategic advantages in life, that I've thought about people and how I can win them over from a heart standpoint to show them that I really care about them. I historically would want to know what's on your bucket list, because maybe it's something that I could put together that you couldn't. Right.
Yeah.
And it's joyful.
And I was just going to say that I think there's also something really, as I'm sort of sitting in this with you, is like it's energy too. I'm kind of a believer in energy, like the energy that you put out, you get back. And so every time Karen would find one of those cards, it's like it would have been a bolt of energy for her. And she's thinking, and then if you give, you put your goals and things that you're doing and the joy that you're having online, that's energy that you're putting out, and people react to it in a positive way.
For sure.
I think that's a really interesting whether it's a handwritten note to a customer, you put a little pep in people's step in a way.
Yeah, so I really I'm running a risk with my new book because the first, I don't know how many pages, but let's just say that it's the first 15 pages are 3 to 5 testimonials from people per page. So the book is filled with these testimonials, but they're testimonials from people that said, my life changed because of the processes that Jack introduced me in this. And so it's validation of what you're going to read in this book is real. Like it's stuff that will take your life and take it to a much higher level. It's not, hey, patting me on the back and look at all my testimonials. It's you're about to go on a ride reading this book that's going to be life-changing.
Yeah.
Route
Definitely.
to an exceptional life.
And let's talk about the book. So it's coming out, I think you said March 11th or something?
March 11th is the official release date. It's sitting out up on the hardback is sitting on Amazon now for pre-order. I just am this week finishing up the proof of the audio version.
Okay.
So that'll be up on there as well. And I'm waiting for the shipment of the books. I got 10 sent to me, the ones that you see behind you there. But I had, the formal initial order of I don't know how many 10,000 books is due sometime in mid-February. Yeah.
And what was the sort of impetus behind writing it? Like why did you want to write this book?
For several reasons. I'll give you just two. One, because I've seen so many other people's lives improve because of one-on-one conversations with me and taking them through the calendar and the process and how do we go through all this. And then they implemented it and then it went on to, I've got a guy, the story in the book, when I first met him, he was in his 20s. He was over 400 pounds. He's now at 210 and has done marathons and Ironmans. And it was because of the process. And so who else? When I met his parents who took me to dinner in Chicago, they said that we want to take you to dinner because we believe that you've saved our son's life. And I said, well, I don't know that I've saved it, but I may have extended his journey. That's probably fair. So who else is Michael out there? Where are the other Michaels out there that I could, affect positively? So that's the big reason. And then the second reason was I wanted to leave my story with my grandkids and the like. It's just here's who this guy was, and maybe you could take it to the next level from him.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, and I'm very grateful. I think even doing this episode is really fun for me because recording something like this and what you're basically doing with a book is you're kind of syndicating, you're recording your thoughts and everything. And then people can, it's just shared again. And I think that's what I really love about these conversations is even when I'm talking to you one-on-one, I'm like, man, I wish I recorded that. I want to share that with somebody else. Like I learned a lot on that call. And I think that's what's so great about technology these days is I find myself going back to some podcasts and I want to hear that again. Like what was that about? And so I really appreciate the time.
Yeah. I had Karen listen to a book last month called Relentless.
Oh, yeah.
And she said, that's a book that I'm going to listen to every month.
Yeah, sometimes you need that kind of kick in the butt or whatever it is.
Right? Yeah, let's go, right?
And I'm by the way, I'm so glad. I want to call this out. You read your own book, right? You Audible.
Yeah.
So that is so important. If I could tell any author, or that I want to hear Jack's voice. I don't want to hear a hired voice person's voice. To have you, if I'm running or going for a bike ride and having you in my ear for 5-6 hours.
Yep.
It's amazing.
The technician that was doing the work in the studio, he remarked in the first hour we took a moment's break, and he said, "Man, this really makes a difference with you standing up." Oh. And I guess a lot of people have recorded these things sitting down, and I couldn't imagine sitting down. Like I'm recording it in my. I'm
You're screaming at some people.
What I do, right? It's how I am. And I said, actually, I think that that's something that you should suggest and recommend to people when they come in.
Yeah. And how long I'm curious, do you know how long the audio is going to be?
Yes, 6.5.
Okay, so I always listen to do you listen to your books at 1.7 or 2?
1.5 is where I do.
Yeah, so I'm at like 1.75, so I can't wait to hear you could read a 6-hour book in like 3 hours, right? It's amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of audio, right?
Yeah, and you recently switched to audio, kind of.
I did it last year. Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I used to be the Kindle zealot, and the Kindle I'd have to go find it and gen it up with a battery. It's been in the dark for so long.
Yeah, I love hearing authors speak, into your ear for 3 hours or 4 hours. It's awesome.
For sure.
Well, we should probably wrap up, and I just wanted to just ask, what's your kind of favorite place for people to follow you or check you out? I know you're on social media, but I think is it Facebook?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you 2 websites. One on the business side, which is jackdalysales.com. And by the way, if any business person is listening to this, the website's intentionally loaded up with so much stuff that you can pull off of there for free.
Yeah.
Workbooks on sales and sales management, 300 plus videos that are 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 8 minutes type of thing, magazines. So jackdalysales.com is the place from the business side. And then we just put up Jack Daly's lifebydesign.com. And and so the appendix in the book is hold on just a second, and I'll show you this. So this side of the book is the book. This is the appendix.
Okay.
There's nine sections of the appendix. So on the audio, I said, hey, listen, there's a couple sections of the appendix that I'm going to share with you in the audio, but just go to my website, and all of the appendix is on my website. There's 9 different sections. They're all on Jack Daly's lifebydesign.com. So you can pull them down. There's templates to follow the process, all of that. But the appendix is filled with, for example, the 100 marathons I ran. What day, what time did I have? Nobody wants to listen to that on an audio, but you might want to take a glance at it, right?
Yeah.
Your question earlier, hey, there must have been years where you must have run like 10 marathons, and you'll see them right there, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a section on visiting all the presidential libraries, and what my leadership lessons that I learned in visiting the presidential libraries. But it's the date that I went there and where it is, and stuff that doesn't play well for audio. So,
yeah. And you're active on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. I love your
all the the Instagram and the Twitter and all, but quite frankly, I personally don't do a lot of that. It's about me and that, but I personally dabble in the Facebook place, but the rest of it is I got a team of people that represent me there.
For sure. But I find the Facebook feeds very inspiring. There's probably something on there about your rowing this morning and we are 10:30.
Graham, knowing that we were going to be on here, I had to bring this out. These are my noise canceling headphones that go with me on all my flights. And one of the things that I do when I teach people is teach them about people's different personalities. And my personality is I go onto a plane, I don't really want to talk to the person that's sitting next to me. So literally, I board the plane with my headset. And I was up in Vancouver for one of those sales training workshops that you attended, and you and your team gifted me something, and I carry it with me all the time. And it's because the noise canceling headphones weren't obvious enough for you. and the lesson here is this is a touch piece, right?
Yeah.
This is the equivalent of a card that in a group that was 50 or 60 people in that workshop, you're the guy that I'll remember forever. because every flight I take, there they are, and there's Graham.
Well,
So
I didn't know you're going to do that, but I want to just add a little bit to that story because it was so funny to me when you told it. And this is another thing that I find that you do is you inspire people to do these things. So you were at that Vancouver session, and it made a lot of sense. Like, I'm talking for 3-5 days straight, hours on hours. My voice is raspy. I get on a plane. I don't want to talk for 5 hours to somebody
Right.
else. So you put the headphones on, and then you said that sentence, and I wrote it down. And I said, Jack, at every one of his sessions, he brings up these treats. And I wanted to be in your presentation somewhere. And
you are.
I got that on Etsy, Etsy.com had it made. And then I remember too, when I started when I hired you as a coach, you didn't know that was me. Like, you hadn't connected it. And then you're like, are you effing kidding me? That was you. And then you pulled it out right there. It was fantastic. So thank you. That was a surprise that we hadn't planned. I appreciate you bringing it up. It's hilarious.
You bet. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's a great way to end.
The other thing I want to add, we just uploaded onto YouTube about 30 short videos. They're all 5 minutes or less, and each one of them is on a different topic to get to know me personally. So, like, what does Jack do at breakfast? Like, what's breakfast?
Yeah.
Right? What are your favorite books that you read? Tell us about you. What was your first job? The type of stuff. And they're very cute. And they just get you behind the scenes as to who I am as a human. Right?
Love it. That's great. Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
And thanks again for today and everything that you're doing to inspire us to, lead life by design. I love it.
Hey, this for me, this was absolutely pure fun. This was a blast. I really treasure the friendship.
Thanks so much, Jack. Appreciate
You
it.
bet. Okay.